Yo, so what is up, guys? Thank you for clicking on this video, and today I'm going to be going over how much it cost me to put this spoolie boy on to this Subaru. On my phone, I have a list of how much everything costs to put on my car, and around how much it would cost you also if you want to turbo your car. My prices differ from yours. You may go a different route. You know, you may go better turbo, you may go cheaper turbo, you may go a different route, you know, stock location for the turbo, you know, yada yada. But I'm just going to tell you how much I spent and around how much you should expect to spend if you're just now interested on going on this journey with NAT swapping your Subaru. So first thing on the list is going to be the spoolie boy, aka Wuhan whistle, aka whatever. I can't think of any of the other names they came up with for turbos, but this is a CX Racing turbo right here, and it is, I would say, name brand eBay. I don't know if that makes any sense, if that's even a thing or not, but behind me right here I have the $150 TD05 turbo that was originally on this car. I went through 3 of these. This is a $150 turbo from eBay, just a random, you know, just journal bearing basic turbo, you know, even an upgrade if you already had an upgraded, or if you already had your car turboed, you could throw this on. It's slightly larger. The stock Wrx turbo, I think, is 47 millimeters on the compressor side. This one is 52.5 millimeters on the compressor side, and then the CX Racing is a 60 millimeter on the compressor side right here. And this one was $150. This lasts about 9 months or so until this happened. If you can see, the nut backed off and it caused it to just mess up completely. You see that? So this will work. You know, you can put whatever turbo you can find on, especially if you do the exhaust setup I do. You can put whatever turbo you want to put on. This is a T3, T4 flange, so what I had to do is get a flange, weld that onto the exhaust, and then I could put whatever turbo I wanted. At first, I wanted to keep it the stock style turbo, which is why I went TD05. You can go TD04, buy some basic, you know, just stock turbo off of a Wrx or STI if you want to just throw a turbo on there. But I went with the upgraded one. This is a dual ball bearing turbo, so it spools up super nice. It sounds super nice, got that really nice spool, and it'll stay spinning for about 10-15 seconds. After I turn the key off, you know, the car will be shutting down, and all you hear is like the shh, you know, the compressor wheel still spinning. So that's how you know it's good, if it wants to keep spinning like that. But as far as price goes, I got this turbo for $460 on eBay. Like I said, you can get the cheaper turbo for $150. I got the very first time I ever turboed my car, if you look way back in my channel, back before I really knew what I was doing, I got a stock TD04 for 80 bucks off of a crashed Wrx, so you can go that route too. But I decided to go with a nice looking chrome turbo that sounds nice and is big. That way it looks good when it's popping out of my hood. I don't want no baby turbo. But anyways, the next thing is going to be the charge piping. So I have a silicone coupler, a piece of exhaust pipe, yes, exhaust pipe, and then I have a 45-degree coupler that then goes to the back of the top mount intercooler. And I spent approximately $50 on the silicone couplers, and then the hose clamps. They come with it's like a bolt style hose clamp that goes through, and there's a nut on it, and the ones they come with are trash, so I replaced them with the normal screw style. You definitely want to do that, because by the time you get it tight enough, there's like no threads left, and then it'll pop. So that's why I did that. And then I got super lucky with my intercooler right here. There's some guy that was moving out of the area that he lived in, and he had all these parts for this bug eye that he was just throwing away. He was throwing away headlights and stuff, and so I actually got this bug eye Wrx intercooler for free. So I got super lucky with that. No price whatsoever. They go for about $100. And if you want to do the different route, going front mount, I know they sell kits for not too much on eBay for that. I know those eBay intercoolers are actually not bad quality. Just make sure to check over them. So I got the intercooler for free. And then the next thing would be the blow-off valve. I have a HKS replica blow-off valve from eBay that I got for 50 bucks. It's got the nice like psh sound, you know, the normal blow-off valve sound. And in order to run a blow-off valve on this intercooler, I had to get a blow-off valve adapter flange that bolts on to where the normal recirc valve would go for these intercoolers. That way I can actually have it blow off to atmosphere and not recirculate back to the intake system. So that adapter was 30 bucks and the blow-off valve was 50. And then if we move to the exhaust portion, the wastegate, I got a 48 millimeter wastegate, I think. I'll add it in if I'm wrong. But I also got that wastegate for 50 bucks on eBay. I've heard that they leak sometimes, so you want to take the top off and make sure it's all good. You may want to adjust the spring if you're just going to run wastegate pressure. But so far it works for me. Literally just welded it straight on to the exhaust, so it works just fine. I got the dump right there, right next to the big exhaust. And then the one thing that people are always asking on the NAT forums, and when people are asking how do I actually mount the turbo, one thing people love to do is buy the stock Wrx headers. And the problem with that on at least this chassis, the GC, GF, GM, you know, whatever first gen Impreza chassis, and I think even some other chassis, you have to notch the subframe. And I mean, all power to you if you have a parts, you know, Wrx you're swapping over or anything, but I wanted to avoid having to notch the subframe, first of all, because then it's hard to take the exhaust off, and it's like right there, and I don't have a good enough welder to want to actually box in the subframe, and it was too much work. I figured I'd skip it. So I'll add in some pictures right here showing what I did. And all I did was buy another set of headers for like 50 bucks from some local guy, and I chopped them, and then I got a piece of exhaust welded together with a Y, and then that Y then comes up straight to the turbo. And then I went to a local exhaust shop that does amazing work. I've taken every single one of my cars there that I got exhaust on. All my buddies go there too. It's a local place here in downtown Houston. They do amazing work for a good price. You know, if you have a welder, all power to you, because this is what my original exhaust looked like. That was with my Harbor Freight welder, and it was a recycled exhaust, so the exhaust was like rusting out and cracking. I couldn't get a good weld on it, and it looks like kneecaps, you know, on every joint. That was literally shit I just cut and placed, and I mean, it worked. It made boost, but it wasn't a good long-term thing. And one thing that's important with when you turbo a car, especially if you put the turbo in this location, you want to brace it. So I actually have a brace right here that goes to some random bolt hole. That way it's solid, because I can move my whole engine, you know, just from the turbo. That way it doesn't, you know, put a lot of pressure on it and crack it, keep cracking your welds. That's what kept happening, because I didn't have it braced on the exhaust that I made. And I got that custom exhaust made for $200, which is not a bad price at all. You can, what I tried to do before was buy a upgraded up pipe off of eBay, and for some reason it bolted to the bottom, but it came out to the driver's side. And on a left-hand drive vehicle, that's where the brake booster's at. That's where everything is. There's like literally no room to put the turbo on the driver's side of the engine. And so that was 120 bucks off of eBay that was just wasted. You know, I don't even know what happened to that exhaust. I think I gave it to somebody to mess around with, but you know, that was a no-go. That exhaust just did not do anything. So it's better to just do it yourself or have a shop make it just like that. And that was only 200 bucks. And then you're gonna need the flange for it, which was a $40 flange. You just go on eBay. If you got a TD04, type in TD04 turbo flange. I got a T3 T4, type in T3 T4 turbo flange, and it's literally a like half-inch thick piece of metal that you just weld on and your turbo bolts to it. And easy as that, literally just weld it on and your turbo just sticks to it. The next thing is how am I feeding the turbo oil? And with this little Cindy Lou Who looking oil feed line, this was $30 on eBay. I typed in the oil feed line kit and it wasn't even specific to the vehicle. All it does is tee in right here. If you see where the oil pressure sensor usually is at, I don't have mine on because I'll get to that later, but I have a standalone ECU, so I don't need it to run. But it's literally a tee in, and then the oil feed line comes out and goes straight into the turbo. This turbo came with a restrictor. You need the restrictor or else you'll flood the turbo with oil and it'll start smoking. So I got the restrictor in the turbo and the oil feed line on the restrictor. And that was only a $30 oil feed line kit. And if we go to the bottom where the oil returns at, you will see I literally have it routing straight to my valve cover breather. And this is only on my application that I can do this, since the turbo is so high up and so far forward. The stock turbo setup is like the turbo will be like right here, and then the air filter will come through that area. And I didn't do it that way, so I got lucky. And some people have said it won't work like this, but I've had it like this for a year and a half with no issues at all. If you start getting a little bit of blow by, then it'll be an issue because it'll actually be trying to come up, but there's enough oil that goes down, so I was able to do it this way. If your turbo's a little bit far forward, you can get away with drilling it in the valve cover, which I'd prefer. That way, you know, it's right there and you don't have to take off the oil pan. And the next thing you'd have to do if your turbo's in the stock location is you're gonna have to drill in the oil pan, get a sandwich bung or whatever, and then weld that in, or JB weld the heck out of it on the oil pan itself. And the other thing I've seen people do for oil feed lines is they get the oil filter sandwich adapter. And I mean, those are good and all, but I've heard they leak sometimes and they're not the best to use. So I just went with the oil pressure sensor area, and that's how it works. With the alternator though, I can't actually run that sensor, but I think I can turn it a little bit more. That way I can run the sensor in the future. But that oil return was free for me. All I had to do was get a little plastic adapter that goes from like the 1/2 inch to 5/8 or whatever. I don't know the actual sizes, but it has to go down in a size to actually be the same size as a valve cover vent. And like I said, it works fine and it goes straight down in my application, so there's no kink, so the oil can flow straight through. So that was like $2 for that plastic piece and the hose clamps I needed for that. And then the next thing that I did is on the fuel system. With more turbo comes more air. With more air, you need more fuel to be able to combust it. And so the only thing I've done to my fuel system is I got the Walbro 255 fuel pump. It was only $80 I think, an easy drop-in kit. Literally went right on to where my old fuel pump was. Easy install, took me like an hour of just messing around. I was kind of interested, looking at all the components there, and you know, it was super easy. And you know, like I said, you know, $80 for easy install. I recommend you doing that. You can do that on a stock setup and it'll still work just as fine. And if you ever in the future need to have more fuel, you're able to suck more out. So I recommend you do that anytime. If your fuel pump goes bad and you're not turboed, throw that in there. Just have it ready. I had that in my car like a year prior to when I turboed it, so I already had all the fuel I needed. But next after that, you're gonna probably need upgraded injectors depending on how big your turbo is and how much boost you push. So right here is my stock fuel injector. If I remember correctly, these are 280 cc's or some low number. And before I tried to get dynoed, you know, probably about 9-10 months ago on that turbo setup with the smaller turbo, and at 4,500 RPMs, my stock injectors were at 97% duty cycle, and that was at no boost. My tuner was literally doing the cruise map, you know, before, you know, I even floored it or anything. Never did any power runs, never got any numbers, was literally just barely pressing the gas trying to get the fuel map done for before boost, and these were maxed out. So I have F1 1150 cc injectors. I went a bit overkill because I do plan on going E85 very soon. So as far as E85 goes, as long as you don't keep the car parked with barely any E85 in, your line should be fine, because they like to oxidize. So my tuner said on stock fuel lines, either keep it completely full of E85 or have no E85 in it. So you can actually run E85 with stock fuel lines, but over time you may have to replace them with, you know, flex fuel capable fuel lines. But as far as that, it doesn't really matter. But I got my injectors for $400. You know, that's probably one of the more pricey things I had to pay for, other than my turbo and what I'm about to get into next. But these stock ones just aren't going to cut it. There's also something else you can do. You can get the RRFPR, I think is what it's called, but it's like a vacuum fuel assist. So whenever it senses boost, it'll actually push more fuel into the injectors, but it's still, this is still the weakest link of the fuel system or turbo, you know, system, because if you can't get enough fuel in, you're going to run lean. And when you run lean is when shit overheats, and when it overheats, boom, you know, it's happened to me before. So you definitely want to upgrade these to better ones eventually. And you can see I had to clip the harness and wire the new harness in. And with this, all the stuff I've told you, you know, with the exhaust, turbo, oil feed lines and everything, it was $1,580 for this total. And this is before, you know, all the engine management stuff that I'm about to get into. So if you want to actually just have a turbo on your car, it'll be around $1,500, $1,000, depending on, you know, the quality of parts you buy, what you actually need. One thing I forgot to mention is this TD05 turbo is internally wastegated. So you don't have to buy an extra $50 wastegate like I did, or, you know, if you want to upgrade it or whatever. But I think these are limited to 8 PSI or 10 PSI. You can actually buy different wastegates with a stronger spring. That way you can get a little bit more boost out of them. But that's the number so far. So the next stuff I'm going to be talking to you about is how much I spent on what you don't necessarily need, but the route I took with it, I spent a pretty penny making sure this engine can 100%, you know, read the boost correctly. So what I ended up doing is going with a standalone Haltech ECU. And I know people have used Speedy, you know, that's like the main go-to for the NAT guys that I've heard of and know of, you know, on Subarus. And all power to you if you go that route. You know, it's not as great of a system as Haltech, but it still works just fine. And the Haltech ECU I went with is a 550 Elite ECU, and the ECU with the wiring and everything was around $1,200, and it's not too bad of a number. But the part that really messed me up was the fact that I couldn't figure out how to wire it up to all the sensors I needed. So I had to take it to a shop, which is now my tuner. So he knows all my fuel maps. He's the one that does everything. And that's the part that kind of, you know, skyrocketed the value of this turbo build. But in the end, I'm still happy because I have a super accurate reading. I can see all the stuff, and you know, I have two-step, you know, all the nice stuff that comes with having a standalone ECU. But the next thing is a tune. You know, if you have a standalone ECU, you definitely need a tune. And so he was able to put me on the dyno, all-wheel drive dyno, give me a full tune, do my whole fuel maps. Like with the injectors, you're not going to be able to run bigger injectors on the stock ECU because it's going to push 50% duty cycle as if it's a 280cc injector, not as if it's a 1000cc injector. So you'll be having way more fuel than you need, because I was going to put the injectors on before the tune, but he's like, no, that won't work at all. Everything will be messed up. You'll be running way too rich. So that's the thing you're going to have to worry about. If you do go with bigger injectors, you're going to have to get it tuned, and they don't have any tuning software for the stock ECU, so that's why you have to find a piggyback system or just go full standalone, which is what everybody pretty much does now. And the tune is $500 for me for the initial tune, and then it's $250 or $350 for any upgraded tune. So now that my car is fully tuned, if I want to go back to if I want to do E85, it'll be another $250, $350. You know, I don't have to pay the full price, but that's just my tuner here in Houston that I'm going to, which is CP Motorsport. Shout out to y'all. Y'all did a great job. The next thing is gauges. This is not needed at all, but you definitely should know, you know, what your stuff is. So I have a boost gauge and an AFR gauge, both from Glow Shift. So with those two gauges, it was $230. I'm pretty sure I got the AFR gauge for $160. And then the boost gauge for $80, if I remember correctly. And they're super easy to install. And with this ECU, I don't necessarily need an O2 sensor reading. You know, it is possible to wire it in. I don't have it wired in right now. So this O2 sensor is literally just for my AFR gauge, so I know if I'm running too lean to let off or too rich, you know, to, you know, see if there's an issue. And then the boost gauge is nice that I can see the full 15 PSI, and I can, you know, control it. If I don't want to go full out, I can hold it at 5 PSI with the throttle. And the other thing I haven't mentioned yet is I have an electronic boost solenoid. They have manual ones if you want to go that route, if you're not going to go with the ECU and stuff, but that lets me do boost by gear, and it lets me easily regulate the boost. That way I don't have to rely on the wastegate spring or just a little knob. You can get the manual ones where you just turn a little knob and it gives you, you know, more or less, so you can go that route also. But that electronic boost solenoid was here, but I think it was like 50 bucks. It's a Mac valve. It's port goes in, it's got a little filter that it shoots the excess vacuum air out. That way you get more boost, and then one that goes out right back into your vacuum system. So with all this totaled up, with the ECU is when this price skyrocketed, but I spent around $3,500 more or less, probably a little bit more than that, to fully get this car running on a nice turbo setup. There are cheaper ways to do it, there are better ways to do it, but you know, I made decent power. On the dyno I made 230 horsepower, but my clutch was slipping and I had a few pre-turbo exhaust leaks, and after I fixed that I could definitely feel a little increase of power. I put a eBay Stage 4 XTD clutch. I don't know if you can see the sticker underneath the hood, and so far it's holding up nicely. My stock XZEDI OEM Plus clutch could not hold up to it, so that's another thing you may have to consider when turboing, the other supporting mods that follow with that. But I don't know if I said, but this is a stock engine. Nothing is done to the engine at all. Literally dropped straight in. It's a JDM EJ20 single overhead cam, not dual overhead cam. And the reason I went with this engine is because first of all, I blew up my EJ22. I tried an EJ25, kept having head gasket issues. The cylinder walls are thinner, and the EJ20 has the thickest cylinder walls. It is the smallest displacement other than like the EJ18, but I know those don't make good power. So I went with this setup and I'm really happy with it. It's really simple. and you know, it takes me 40 minutes to pull the engine out. And yes, I've timed myself. I've actually gotten time shorter than that, but that was the most recent time it took me to pull the engine just to change the clutch out. But other than that, guys, I'm gonna throw in a little compilation of me driving the car and stuff, and hopefully this video helps you. Follow my 2 Instagrams right here. Hit me up if y'all have any questions, comments, concerns. Like and subscribe to the video. Thanks for watching, guys, and peace.
Oh my God!